All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? We want to thank everyone for being here in attendance, and we're missing some city council members. We have Debbie on the phone. You still there, Debbie?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm just listening.
Okay, great. And we appreciate having members of the CARE Advisory Commission here, and we appreciate having Y2 Analytics here. So Scott, I guess you and Clarine will turn the time over to you for presentation.
All right. I don't think I need this, but just in case she needs to hear me on the phone. Can you hear Debbie?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay. So let's see. How do I get this up on the screen, first of all? Excellent. Okay, great. So just a brief overview of some of the results we'll discuss. A majority of Orem residents have an overall favorable view of the CARE tax, which is a good place to start as we sort of examine this environment. I'm going to present the results of this survey and this information in context, and hopefully it will just be more data for your arsenal as you all are making decisions. This doesn't mean that you have to make policy based on the information that we have. This is just information to lend to your recommendations. But so we're at a positive starting point in terms of the CARE tax overall. Orem residents frequently participate in arts and culture activities in the city and elsewhere. They are very actively involved in the arts community and invested in it as such. When it comes to allocating grant money, residents prioritize high-quality productions and popular activities. But how fiscally responsible an organization is also matters to them when they're allocating tax dollars. I think that makes sense. And a majority of city residents are willing to make a trade-off to fund fewer projects or activities in order to support some capital expenses like venue improvement or construction. So we'll delve a little bit more into each of these things. A quick look at the methodology for this survey. We conducted an online survey of Orem resident panelists via email. In total, we sent out just shy of 7,000 email invitations, and just over 1,000 of our panelists started the survey. 778 respondents completed interviews, which lends us a response rate of about 11%, and that's pretty good, just in context. And we have a margin of error of 3.5 percentage points. So looking at the CARE tax environment to start off, 76% of residents have a favorable view of the CARE tax. You have 11% there at the somewhat favorable, and 9% say they have a very unfavorable view of the tax. 4% skip the question. But that's actually surprisingly positive for anything tax related. So 60% of our respondents said that they attended arts activities in Orem a few times a year or more. So again, a really high, actively involved arts community here. And looking at the activities that people have participated in, 59% report having attended an activity or event at the Hale Center Theater, 57% have attended a performance at the Sarachelle, 50% at something at the City Library, and 43 have said that they have attended performances at the Sarah Indoor Theater, sort of trickling on along down the line after that for several different arts and cultural activities that we listed for them just to get a sense of what things people have participated in. A majority of Orem residents also participate in events outside the city at least a few times a year, so 61% total here. And when we asked them why they attended arts and cultural events, their their highest ranked reason on average was to be entertained during their leisure time, to be uplifted or learn something new, or to support a friend or family member were also reasons that ranked high on the list. Lower down on the list here, we have to be out in the community with friends and neighbors to help make Orem a cultural center and to develop and/or share talent. So those are the average rankings for each of those list items. So when we look at this context, this environment that we have for care funding priorities, we asked respondents, and we worked with the Care Commission to sort of develop a list of questions that would hopefully be helpful. And we asked respondents to give us the importance of each potential criteria for grant selection. So for any organization that applies for a grant, how should they be judged, and what factors should determine whether or not they receive care funding? The number one most important thing that respondents listed was the quality of the project. Appeal or popularity came in just underneath that, having a stable financial history, and then whether the organization fit with the values of Orem. Those were the ones that clustered up at the top there. Going on down the line on the scale of importance, affordability of the activity or event, reach, so how many people in the city will be able to attend or view it, participation, so how many residents or citizens of Orem will be involved in the production, potential for growth, attraction value, long-term projects, grant dependence, historical or cultural significance, and group status. So here we asked them, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is each of these items individually? After that, we asked them to rank each of these items relative to one another. And so you see at the top of the list here, the things that shake out are, again, quality of the project, appeal or popularity, having a stable financial history, and whether it fits with the values of Orem. The one that kind of jumps out that's different here is the historical or cultural significance. So it didn't rate quite as high on an individual evaluation, but relative to these other things, that was something that was important to citizens of Orem. We asked respondents whether they would favor awarding more small grants in order to facilitate more arts activities and events, or if they would prefer to fund fewer projects and have larger grants to fund larger productions and things like that. And the split there favored larger grants to bigger productions and organizations by 6 points here. So they had a sliding scale and were asked to determine, where they would like to see that mix. And the balance favored funding fewer projects with larger grants. In a similar trade-off question, we asked whether they would like to see care funds go to more arts and culture activities or capital expenses, so building or upgrading venues for performances and activities and events. And again, the split favors using some of those care funds to build or upgrade venues. We also asked respondents if they had $100 of care funding to allocate, how they would divide up those funds. And so here you see on average, or the average amount allocated to each item on this list. So we had the construction of the Orem Library Auditorium, improvements to the Sarah Shell, outdoor concerts, musical performances, cultural festivals, and community theater, all kind of racking in at the top there. Moving on down the line, museums, semi-professional theater, storytelling events, historical programs, etc., down to the tail. But you can certainly see which activities or expenses would be the most popular here or would be the most well-funded. This is just a look at the averages. So we also included a set of distributions here, and these are organized in order from the highest to the lowest average. And it's kind of hard to see on this.
And we'll send this as well, so you can have it to look.
Thanks, Stephen. But so the interesting thing to look at here is for the library auditorium, which is the distribution in the top left corner of the screen, you can see that there's a smaller proportion of people saying, well, clustered at 0 there, so they wouldn't give any money to that. And the tail is longer, and there's a nice little jump of people at the far right end of that distribution saying they would donate all of their allotted funds to the construction of a venue where arts and performances could be held. And then Next, improvements to the Sarah Shell, similar distribution there. Outdoor concerts coming in third, again, a similar distribution. And then as we move along down the line, you see more and more people allocating less and less money, and hence the lower averages. But just to look at sort of the overall picture instead of just a number at a glance. We asked respondents whether they thought the city needed more venues for cultural events, activities, and performances, and they were split. So we had just over a third saying they agreed with that statement, just under a third saying they disagreed, and then 28% in the middle that didn't want to state an opinion. But when we asked about support for the Orem Library Auditorium, we tried to put this in fairly stark terms so that they knew what the trade-offs were. If CARE money was going to be funding the construction of a library auditorium, there would be less money available for grant applicants. And 52% of residents said that they supported devoting some portion of CARE funds to this capital expense. And then we also asked respondents to evaluate venues where they had attended arts and culture activities. First, we looked at the Sarah Shell. Overall, it gets good ratings across the board. Here we have 60, what is that, 39? Roughly 60% of people saying excellent or good seating at the Sarah Shell. A little closer to 80% saying there's been sound quality. Just over 80% saying the ticket pricing is good or excellent, and overall performance or event quality at 88% there. The indoor theater gets similar ratings, good across the board, to be sure. 74% good seating, 89 good sound quality. Ticket pricing just a little bit lower there, but 82% overall. And 86% say that overall performance or event quality is good or excellent. The Hale Center Theater, comparable ratings to the Sarah, with more people loaded in sort of the excellent category here for a few of these things. So overall performance and event quality is the one that jumps out there, 67% saying that the performances are excellent. Ticket pricing is a little bit lower for the Hale Center in comparison to the Sarah. And seating down there at 62% overall. Sound quality just under 80. Sorry. And fewer respondents have attended library events than the Sarah or the Hale, but among those who have, 56% said the seating was excellent or good, mostly good there. Sound quality, 75% there, and just shy, well, right at 90% overall performance or event quality, good or excellent. So that's just a quick overview of our survey results. We are happy to answer any further questions that you have, look into subgroups and populations here that might be of interest, but hopefully this is some good information to give you context for decision making. Again, just one source of information while you are determining what's the best approach for CARE funding allocation and grant recipients. But any questions?
Any questions from the council? Yes.
You send out 700 and something surveys, is that correct?
7,000.
7,000.
Yeah,
8 completed it. 1,000 started it. 778 completed it.
Now, those that didn't complete it, are they in here?
no, so this is only among completed interviews. So we had 778 completed interviews, another just over 200 that fell off somewhere in the middle.
So is that 11% return, is that, that seems low to me, but is that good?
It's actually pretty good. It's comparable to what you would get for a telephone survey. The number of calls that you have to make to get someone to complete a telephone interview is in the low teens, really. So it's good.
Was there any weighting done so that we know it's representative of the population?
Yes, so we did weight the responses minimally just to make sure that the demographics were reflective of city census demographics, mostly in regards to age and gender for this round of the survey. Yes.
Yes.
Is that including, how do I say this, college kids then? UVU?
Yes, so the panel includes a subset of UVU residents or UVU students who are Orem residents. We have more panel attrition among that group than the rest of the Orem demographic, but we include them in the panel. No, so for the UVU residents, we actually obtained their emails through the university. We have an agreement with them. So we got their contact information through a student assessment board of some sort. You know, I don't know that we have that class information. Sorry. I think, I know we have.
I don't believe we, I mean, the ages are so varied that you'll have a lot of 20-year-old freshmen and 22-year-old freshmen. We're more just worried about them
Well,
being students.
even just trying to figure out residents,
If they don't live in Orem, they didn't,
how long
they're,
have they been in Orem? That's what I'm kind of
How long
wondering.
they've been a resident of Orem?
Right.
Is that-
yeah.
is that indicated at all?
We don't have an indication in this particular survey. We asked in the previous community survey when they were recruited to the panel how long they had been an Orem resident. But we could certainly look back at that. Yes.
How many students did you have?
I'm not sure what the cross-section is for this response rate or for this round of a survey. I can look back at that though.
And, you know, when we started with students, we obviously realized that many of them will come and go within a few years, but students will always be there. And so we wanted to make sure that students' voices, not necessarily the individual only, are represented.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mark?
So, the overall satisfaction was pretty good.
Yeah.
Jeff, will you pass the mic over, just so, that's how Debbie, that's, I mean, yeah.
He doesn't want to hear me anyway.
Yes, I do.
Hey, Deb. Clock's ticking, get here. So
I'm coming.
The overall feedback is residents are generally pretty happy with the way things are going. Is that kind of a fair statement? So for me, I'm trying to say, so is the message coming out of this, is there any one or two or three things that says, based on the survey, that there's discontent or there's something that needs to change? So from a policy or from an action standpoint, it seems like we could say we're going in a pretty good direction. The area that we should look at would be what?
So for this particular survey, I think we focused mostly on if residents could steer the priorities of the grant selection, what would those priorities be for them? And so I think the thing that they congregated around the most was making sure that we're funding quality performances and activities. And the other thing that we focused on for this survey was whether or not residents wanted to see care funding allocated towards capital expenses. And I think there's some strong evidence here to indicate that they do.
So currently, we don't allocate anything towards capital expenditures. It's all towards programming.
That's my understanding.
And so they're saying spend more towards cap, but not necessarily how much. Because they're happy with.
Right. Well, and it's difficult to ask residents to say how much. That kind of policy intensive question, people aren't good at answering. But you can get a sense of direction and priorities from public opinion research. So that was our goal.
Thank you.
Follow up.
Typical, because like he said, so at the beginning, our first, how happy are you with the care tax? Very positive responses.
Right.
It really seemed to me that a lot of the responses were very positive. There was, even when you're asking about the different venues.
Right.
Do you ever start with that first one? Do they?
Go ahead, Scotty.
Hi, I'm Scott. So we do a lot of work like this around various taxes of different municipalities. This is one of the most popular taxes I've ever seen. So you ask, to your point about people seem pretty happy, I think that's a fair statement. And so I think one of the best ways to characterize these results is to say, of all the options on the table, here's some directions you can feel free to go, but people are happy with the way this has been managed up to now. Yeah, we would have seen like that 70, what is it, 72,
76.
76% approval rating of a tax. That's
huge.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Especially considering our history in Orem, forgive me. There have been some issues come up over the last few years that have divided the city in ways. So sometimes there are cities that are just very happy generally because of the way the city's been managed. Orem has come a long way since, say, 2014 or so, when we were looking at some of the other programs in the city. So I think this council should see these data in that light.
And the overall percentage is higher than, I think, the approval rating on the care tax wasn't about 65% of that voted for the care tax versus 35 against. So the actual approval after the fact seems to have jumped up a little bit compared to the voting record.
Yep. So you had 20% in the combined unfavorable categories there.
What other questions do we have? I have,
The people that responded about, I don't remember what was worded on the survey, but about
Yes.
light on that.
Not much more than the question wording that we gave them. So the priority that jumped out that you're referring to is that they wanted to know that an organization had that the organization had a history of managing its money well and was financially stable. We didn't give them much more of an explanation beyond that, so people interpreted that in their own light.
we are a very conservative community, so I would imagine that would come forward.
On that same set of criteria, one of the criteria that was rated very low was that the organization would rely on this grant, right? And
That was my, I guess where I was going with that is, we feel a sense of direction there that if someone's not taking care of themselves financially, is there a point that we need to wean that or help them become more stable?
I pair the two together, and it's my sense that, based off of these results, that there are higher priorities to Orem citizens than keeping alive an organization that requires, what's the right way to word this? Yeah, I think that doesn't mean they don't want to, right? It's up there, it's on the criteria list, but they have higher priorities. They're more interested in quality programming than in this being a program by which we maintain a set of groups that otherwise would go away, I guess is the way I would characterize it.
So your answer there on the historic or cultural significance, I find that very interesting. I don't know if I would see that in a lot of other communities, but I think that's referring to, for example, the CIRA, referring to, outdoor theater and so forth, and the cultural significance, the Hale Center Theater. Very strong feelings there, I think.
I think that's fair, and I would defer to Kyrene, but it's my sense because what's interesting about that second question, the first one, we give them all of them and say, just rate them, rate all of this stuff. On this one, we force them to choose. We say, now tell us which is first, which is second. And when forced to choose, this historical stuff jumps up in a big way, which to me means there's a lot of sense that that's important.
And at the same time, quality is number one, and I think in our community, and I think most of us could agree, that our quality is very, very high. I hear that from visitors coming from other states, other cities, the quality of productions, they have a hard time believing the talent that is here within our city. So, any other questions or thoughts? So, I have three things I wanted to bring up, but Janelle, did you want to say something?
But you're talking, I just want to make some clarifications, and this might be something else, but for instance, the library, that was already handled in the first 8 years with care tax money and then private donations and that. What I was wanting to know is, was this going on the idea that we would take another series of care tax to finish that and add to the money that's already sitting in a bank waiting for a library auditorium to be built? That's one of the questions, because there's been a question all along about using CARE tax money for programs versus capital improvements by law. And so I'm just wanting to know how that interpretation would be, council or anybody else on
Can you
that.
get the sound out there and turn it on? They would like to hear it.
You understand what I'm asking, right, Mary?
Talking to me, or are you talking to her?
Yeah, well, but you understand what the question is, because we had the 4 million that was set as a cap in that first run of CARE tax money that would be allowed to be what was for, at one point, the Center for Story. What I'm asking is this survey saying we want to take another run at CARE tax and add additional money so we get that auditorium done as a public facility and take it away from things like other, like programs?
Right. So
Does that make sense?
yes, that makes sense. And all I can say is the question wording that we provided people on the survey is all of the contextual information that we gave. So we didn't ask them how they felt about the money that has already been set aside for the library auditorium, and we didn't ask them about previous funding sources or anything else. We simply asked whether they would support taking some portion of CARE tax funds moving forward to construct or improve facilities such as the library auditorium.
And I had one other question. Did you, in formulating the questions, did you utilize or look at the first survey that was taken when we first passed the first CARE tax? I'm very interested in the demographic numbers, especially with the UVU students being added onto that, because I've seen the survey this afternoon, and it showed that a very much younger age demographic than I thought for Orem, answering those questions. And so that might give a, not necessarily skewed, but it's showing how Orem may have changed over the last 8, 9, 10 years as we've gone from one CARE tax segment to the next CARE tax, and what now the residents of this city want rather than what they wanted when we did the first CARE tax. Does that make sense?
Right, that makes sense. I don't have that other survey in front of me to compare to, so not a lot of reference there, but I'd be happy to look at the demographic breakdown.
I mean, the median age in Orem is 24, so I think that surprises a lot of people. I mean, so we have a pretty young demographic. You don't see them in the city council meetings often, but
One thing I think might be helpful is to bring that other survey out and send it to the council and the CARE tax committee.
Yeah.
As a comparison, so, yes.
And also, 7,000 email invitations were sent. So maybe all the older people just didn't respond.
Who were more, do you have stuff on who's more likely to respond to an email survey? Yeah.
We do, because we have a lot on that. The piece about the demographics on this one is that both in terms of response rate and in terms of weights, the demographics reflected here, we've done our best to make sure they reflect what we get from the U.S. Census, okay? So if a prior survey was not this young, they probably, many researchers use the census as the benchmark, but some not so much, right? And there's also two kinds of surveys, right? There's what we do is called scientific surveying. It's our goal to get a representative sample of a population. There's also another part that's kind of like more of a canvas, where the goal is just to get as many responses as possible with less interest in representativeness. And a lot, they're used for different purposes, but in our case, we're doing the first.
Okay, Debbie, we haven't heard from you. Any comments or questions?
I'm actually going to be walking in the door in 1 minute, so let me ask when I get there.
Okay.
Be right in.
Still have sandwiches for you.
Thanks.
So,
that answered all of
can
your
we
questions.
turn that off?
I've actually got a follow-up question related to that.
Cut that mic down.
Okay.
On the back.
Thanks.
So my question relates to not just how the survey results have changed over time, but how the demographics of the city have changed. So obviously Orem has grown since that last survey has taken place. I'm just wondering, I think UVU might have outpaced Orem's growth during that time. So I'm wondering if you compared UVU's growth as a percentage of the city compared to the rest of the city's growth during that time. I'd be curious to see how that factors into it, because if we're slightly skewing more toward the views of the UVU students simply because they're a bigger part of our city than they used to be, then I think that might be fair to consider, because I'm not sure that's really going to be changing it. If you look at their growth projections over the next few years, I don't think the rest of Orem is going to be growing at that same. And granted, they're going to be growing in other campuses, not necessarily located here in Orem, but I think that's still kind of the heart of where that growth is going to take place.
To that point, it would be interesting to find out how many students you actually did survey.
Yeah, one thing that we can do, because this has come up with councils before, for example, it's my, I don't want to characterize this incorrectly, but if you'd like to see the sample where we break out and say, well, here's just the student portion and set them aside, and here's everyone else. So from a decision-making standpoint, so our goal as survey researchers is to represent the city as a whole, but if there's subgroups of the city that to you are more relevant for this question, we're happy to break them out, right? So in the case of, say, just as a theoretical position, maybe you believe that the students, because of their transiency, maybe shouldn't have as much input on this question, that's fine. We can take the survey and run a subset of those who are just non-students and show you the results. It's been our experience that the results are not nearly as dramatic as you think they are, okay? Especially students who have lived in Orem for a while tend to match the city as a whole. But we're happy to run them and give you a set of results that would exclude students or that would show you what the subset of the population that are non-students feel. Happy to do that.
Sure.
Students really aren't the taxpayers, though, are they?
Sales tax, yeah, this is all.
This is sales
all
tax.
sales tax, yeah.
But
And
sales tax,
and
say
for my,
that's different though, then you're changing the nature of our community. The care tax, the way I see it, is we impact kind of long-term the community, you know, the people who are living here. So if you got I mean, I understand that the transient nature of some people pay sales tax, and probably they're not gonna be here as long to enjoy the decisions that we make.
I think students will be here for a long, long time. I mean, but what about the next student that comes in 4 years?
Well, and I guess.
In the aggregate,
I guess
at
that's what I'm
least,
intending, is maybe they don't have the same.
Well, yeah, in general, and that's why we do these surveys regularly, right? That's why we don't rely on surveys 10 years old, because things have changed significantly. Our community looks a little different. The demographics may look different. We don't completely throw out 10-year-old surveys, but we like to look at it again and see if anything's changed.
And probably, I guess my point too, I really believe they do participate in our community to a point, but I also think they participate in their community at UVU in the activities that are there. I just think of my daughter, you know, she doesn't leave campus too much to go, there's so much there to do, but to then be involved in a community,
Yeah.
probably a little different.
I think UVU being a commuter school is a little different than, where does your daughter go to school? And yeah, BYU I think is a far different experience than UVU, just because it's a commuter school. So a lot of people don't live, there's no on-campus housing, people don't live on campus, there's fewer housing next to the university than BYU has. I mean, I think there's a lot of things you're saying that are, of course, relevant, but to suggest that students shouldn't have a voice, I guess that hasn't been our,
Don't assume.
or that they should have
Really not.
discounted voice.
Look at that in making our decisions.
Yeah.
and just clarify from our research point of view, we're happy to do that. No, I think the criteria that this council uses is for this council's view. So if you'd like us to run a set of numbers that's non-student, we're happy to run them and send them around. No problem.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
quick question.
Yes.
So basically 52.
Hey, let's, Jeff, just sorry, it's just over the recording and everything.
So 52% were basically split. Do students pay, I mean, do UVU students actually pay into the taxes that go to this sales tax?
Yes. Everything they buy. Yep.
No, I wouldn't say we're split though, because you got away. So you really have 52% to 24% in favor of versus opposed to.
Okay, so 20 that neither support nor oppose, okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
So how did we come up with the demographics of the survey? Because I thought in the past, we used the utility bill emails.
So there, let me clarify some.
Might be an interesting demographic if we surveyed those and see what the difference would be.
So let me explain the difference between, just get a little nerdy for a second, but between what we call target population and frame. Okay, so our target population is the citizens of Orem, which includes everyone, which includes a breakdown that will match the U.S. Census in terms of age, education levels, geography. And the reason we use the U.S. Census is because they go to great expense, right, to do that, the most thorough jobs. We use them as a benchmark. The frame, when we first recruited this panel, started with a combination of things, actually. The utilities lists, the registered voter file was mixed into there, and then lists from UVU. And all those things have been kind of refreshed from time to time. I don't think we've done a whole lot of that, but they've been refreshed from time to time to make sure that as people move out and move in, we replace them on the panel, right? And so we've watched response rates over time. We've been working with Orem for a few years. And so certain demographics respond more often than others. So for example, students, it's actually pretty hard to get them to take these kind of surveys, and so they'll get a couple extra
Give them a free meal.
invitations. It's my sense, actually, if anything, that students may be, if anything, underrepresented in this survey, if we were to look real honestly at it. That's a real possibility. But so we get who responds. We look at the demographics at a raw level, and then we do some adjustments to make sure that groups that didn't respond at enough levels are able to be fully represented. So, for example, groups that tend to respond more often, the more stable someone is, the more likely they are to respond. So people who've lived in the city a long time. Older residents, surprisingly, people question the mode all the time, but it's been our experience that older residents respond at levels that you would be surprised by. They're all on Facebook to see grandchildren photos, and so they're all on these kinds of things. And most of our surveys are done on a phone anyway, right? So we optimize them for that, and so a lot of people just with cell phones are taking them. That said, we're happy to run a full report and give you a full setup along those lines, and then any subgroups that you want to break out. So we've already heard students versus non-students. If you have age groups or geographies that we should break out for your consideration, we are very happy to do that.
Debbie?
When I actually looked at the data that was sent to me, I was surprised how many didn't have children. They're listed 0. So I'd like to run it with people who actually have children in a family atmosphere versus a single. So I don't know if that would, if their demand would be different. I was actually surprised when I got the end and saw how many people didn't have children. It was kind of shocking to me. If I remember the demographic, it was really high. Do you remember? 0.
Yeah, it was. So they were basically interviewing and working with people in senior citizen centers. They're very easy to contact. I'm just kidding, but anyway.
No, we didn't.
I'm sorry.
So,
Don't write that down.
the breakout you're interested in is a combination of marriage and children. So you want
Children versus.
I would agree with
married versus, okay.
That would be, to me, that'd be interesting to see if their results are a little different. Just I think the contrast would be interesting.
And is it people that have children at home or children? Because I'm trying to remember, if we have children at home.
We asked
Under 18.
Under 18.
grandparents will not count.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's found, though, pull out. Is that what you were saying?
I mean, it depends. We had a survey on internet policy a few years ago where students were very different. I haven't looked, but we can take a look.
Mark.
So one thought that I had was from a standpoint of recognizing what the general population of Orem is versus what the leadership groups think. I would be interested in offering the surveys up to the Arts Council and to the Care Commission, and having it just be a separate look to say, for those that are involved in this on a regular day-to-day basis, the people that see what's going on, how do they view the overall opportunities that are in front of us as opposed to things that have been allocated? Is something that would make any positive impression?
For instance, Arts Council, there's a handful that personally receive money from this. So would you not include those that are
Not include them. I mean, it's a survey that allows us to kind of see for those that work in the industry. And I would be inclined to look at not only the current Arts Council, but also ones that have been on there and have since, because we've cycled through a pretty good number. My guess is that when you take all the ones that are there and have been, that we're probably looking 30, 40 people that have been, I mean, this is the industry they work in and would have a very informed opinion about the opportunities we have to look forward to and or the concerns they may have with our existing structure. I don't know, but it seems like that may give you an interesting guide in terms of what direction your leadership teams are looking at.
So one thing in relationship to that I thought about going through this is it'd be interesting to interview some of the people who are attending the events and see what their thoughts are. So when I have gone to the outdoor theater at the CIRA, the events are very well attended, usually packed, and the people are very enthused. When I go to the Hale, same thing, they're packed. Tonight they're playing Catch Me If You Can. They have 280 seats available, and when I checked, the last time I checked, they only had 10 seats left. So basically a sold-out crowd. Attending this past week at the Veterans Ceremony, we had good attendance. When I attended Brother Brigham, that was sold out. Jenny Oaks Baker had 2 sold-out performances. And the crowd was very, very enthusiastic. So as I attend those, I see that the people love what they're getting as far as quality, that the attendance is great. I also attend, and this may be a laughing point for some, but anyway, I attend the ballet, and I attend there you go. I attend their various events, and they do some events here at UVU, and they do some outside. So, for example, on Thursday night, I'm going to the Nutcracker Suite, and they do a wonderful performance. They get a couple of rounds of applause afterwards where they have to come back out and take another bow. So I think our quality is really, really high, and I just want to thank the Hale for what they do. I want to thank the CIRA for what they do, the Utah Regional Ballet for what they do. I try to go to all those events. I go to some of the library events as well. The quality there is very high. Now at the library, they do not have enough room for what they're doing, and they really do need an auditorium. And I'm very much in favor of an auditorium. I'm not in favor of a Center for Story, but I am in favor of a library auditorium. And so Joseph Smith, the architect, has been working with the city on revising what the auditorium would look like, moving some of the items out and making it smaller and more affordable. We have $2.5 million that has come out of the CARE tax for the auditorium.
I think it's 1.8 or 1.9, is it?
I
don't think it's 2.5. I think.
Okay, I'll have to check. I thought it was 2.5. And then I am aware that we have other funding sources we're trying to hang on to. The county, as I've written to everybody, has stated that they would consider keeping the $300,000 community grant and giving it to Orem for our new auditorium. And likewise, Karen Ashton said she would look at the idea, don't know what that means, of the $1 million donation. I would like to see the auditorium built. I'd like to see it built sooner rather than later. I'm very much in favor of it. But I have some questions with regards to how some of these questions occurred in the survey with regards to that. And I just wanted to ask Scott and Corrine. Yes, I know. It looks like Scott left, I guess.
He's right.
There he is. Okay, I'm sorry. Some questions. So I have 3 or 4 questions. The first one is on the question where it says there's a 5+ towards building venues and upgrades versus promoting programs. My only question was, I didn't understand what promote means. I mean, I understand the dictionary verbiage of it, but in this context, I thought maybe another question would have been better to use, that, that it pays for, that it supports, that it's the financial resources for, rather than promoting. So On the 5+, I would love to see that question asked again with a different word rather than promote there. The next one is the $100. If you have $100, would you give that $100 for building new facilities, or would you give that for, the programs? And as I looked at it, I thought, well, if I was getting this question, and this is just me, but if I was getting that question, I would say, well, this is a fresh $100. So how do I spend this fresh $100? And so then I would divide it up accordingly. What I wish was put in there was an explanation of how the $100 is being spent right now. So we have a 76% favorable response for the quality of what we have in our programs. Now, what we don't have in this question is the knowledge being put forth that that $100 right now is being used to support personnel, support overhead, support advertising, et cetera, to do that quality. So I think if we could put forward a question that said, $100 right now is being spent for this purpose, would you now then take a portion of that over here or a portion of that over there? Because in this question, it seems to me it's like a fresh $100. So I'm not worried about taking any away from the quality, any away from the overhead, the services, the expenses. I'm not looking at it that way. I'm looking at it just a fresh $100 bill. I would like to see where we tell them how this money is being spent right now so they understand, and then say, of that $100 being spent, would you want to take it this way or take it that way? The last one is the 52% support for the grant application. I still look at that as, what does that grant cover? What does that mean? How is that money being spent right now? So that area, I think that information needs to be given where I don't feel like it's given in this survey. Now, I thought the survey was very well done. I really appreciate it. These are just some tweaks that I would like to see as far as going that way. And as far as a steering committee putting down priorities, to me, as I look at it, the CARE tax was voted on by a majority, and it was voted on with the idea that we would have quality recreation and we would have quality cultural arts within our city. The 76% tells me that we are achieving our quality arts within the city. So the question comes is, do we want to keep supporting it the way it is, or do we want to take away from that support and give support over here? I personally think there are ways that we can build the library, which is what I think everybody keeps referring to, without pulling money away from the CARE tax. I mean, we have taken money from the CARE tax for 8 years for it. We have that money in the bank. I think we're getting closer where we can do something with it. I think we can raise the other funds. But I would like to see it where people understand that this kind of quality comes at a price, and that price is the money that we're helping to support these different institutions with. Lastly, I'd just like to say, as I've watched the cities fight over the Hale Center Theater, West Valley City, Sandy City, Draper. I mean, one builds a facility and they move to another. And we have, like I say, at the Hale Center Theater tonight, there's maybe 10 extra seats, if that. It's a sold house. The reality is, Hale Center Theater is an important part of our community. Our residents love it. I believe that they are different than the Cira. We have packed houses at the Cira. They do an excellent job. I think we're providing the quality the residents want and are paying for. So I'm just saying, I think we're really lucky to have the Hale, and we're really lucky to have the Cira. And so I'd just like to maybe tweak a few of those questions. So.
Are you suggesting we run the whole survey again?
Yeah, let me
I don't know, Sam.
I think that. Yeah, I think that's probably a bad idea financially for the city.
But there are certain questions here that I never saw the questions on them, so that's the part.
I think we did a good job in the prior meeting of setting expectations for what public opinion surveys can and can't do. So one thing that I don't think any of you will be surprised to hear me here is that the group of people in this room, and I'm including myself, we are weird, right? We care about these details. We care about the policy. But your average person doesn't. So if I were to give them the full scope, literally every piece of information about this policy, they wouldn't read it, right? They wouldn't finish the survey. They wouldn't give us any direction. What they're good at is giving overall direction. And so I'm sympathetic to your concerns, but I think even if you brought me those edits ahead of time, I probably would have nixed them, Mayor, just because it's too much information. And I would recommend not running another survey just for financial reasons. I think probably that change in wording, while I think it's an edit that's friendly, and I'm grateful for it, but I kind of doubt it justifies the cost of a survey. Let me just comment back on the goal of this, right? The goal here is simply to give you some direction from people. And it's tempting to want to go back and adjust the survey in ways that allows the survey to tell this committee what to do. It's not going to, right? I can't get the people of Orem to tell you guys exactly what to do because they're not as weird as we are. They don't care about the details of this policy as much as we do. They care about they care about general strokes. They care about their institutions. They clearly care about the SARA. They clearly care about the HAIL, okay? And they can communicate that to us.
They'll tell us after.
I'm sorry?
They'll tell us.
The citizens will tell us after we.
That is the difficulty of your job. That's the difficulty of representative democracy, right? Is that they expect you to make a decision and they will judge you based on it. So one of the things we tried really hard was to give you sets of criteria for success. So what do they care about and what are the criteria by which they will judge this organization? And so when you look at, okay, who should get money? I think they've spoken pretty clearly about those criteria. But I would push back pretty hard on the idea of running another survey, even as a survey salesman.
So that's fine. Don't run another survey. But I would push back on the idea that they had enough information as to on that $100. So it's a tool.
Yes, take it in context. Actually, that's very friendly, Mayor. Take it in context, right? So if you think they didn't have enough information, kind of understand it that way. That's
sure.
I will say, though, I mean, to your point of 76% approved with how it's being run, and that's what you said first. So that would suggest then that they do know how the money's being spent. So they
like the end result. They don't know how the money is spent to get to that end result. So they like the end result. In other words, the $100, they don't know that there's nothing there that says that $100 is being used for all these different purposes already. It's not a fresh $100.
Correct. But if they know what the end result is, then they're suggesting.
And the end result is excellent.
It might be open. Yeah.
And to me, that's what I really like. That I think we're achieving what we've been trying to achieve. We've been doing it the right way. So.
On the other side of that, I kind of like that we didn't say, here's how it's currently being spent. That way, we're not biasing their responses. Well, they're currently at 10%. Well, let's just bump that up to 11 or 12. Whereas if I'm just coming at fresh, then I can, if I was recreating this from scratch, that's really what I'm more interested in seeing.
Any other?
Like we always said, this is one of many tools. This isn't.
Sure.
We're not to walk away and say +5 on facility.
The encouraging thing, I think, is to get such a positive response. And I remember when we fought, or when the fight was going on for the care tax. And, myself, I was very concerned over having citizens helping decide where and how it was being spent. I think that the result, to get a 76% favorable, is just amazing. So
one question I did have, and kind of relates to what Mark said earlier about having comparing to the different groups like the Arts Council, Care Council. I'm not sure we had ever member of the Arts Council. Didn't we ever?
I didn't take it. We didn't take it.
In terms of, so the group that's here represented here is a random sample of the city, but I think we can easily.
So Sam could have been part of the random sample.
But if this group wants to give us a set of emails, and as long as it's under, say,
Steve has those.
From a cost perspective, as long as it's under, say, 50 or so, we're happy to run this and just give you a set.
Yeah, let's do that.
No problem.
I'd love to see the whole city versus just the city council or just the care commission, because I think that helps give us a sense of are we currently thinking the same way as the rest of the city?
He's really asking, how weird are we? Which is a pretty common question.
What's going on, right? So maybe, I shouldn't say. Then some people, percentage-wise, how close are.
Which is fine.
This person dropped back kind of thing, but
Exactly.
how
Just-
close am I to the rest of the city?
And level of.
So yes, go ahead, Scott.
So, some breakouts that we've received so far. So some ones that we're going to run already. Students versus non-students, married with children versus other married and children categories. And then, Mayor, you brought up people who had attended certain events. And since we've asked if they've attended events, we can break those out. So we could break out.
Yeah, that'd be good. I mean, it'd be nice to know that those who are attending have a say in this versus just a large swath who most are not attending on a regular basis. And
I think it's actually most are attending.
Yeah.
Yeah, did we, with the people that said they don't?
no, most said they are attending, but not as far as every month kind of thing, a regular basis.
Okay. I see.
Frequent.
Yep.
So that's kind of a question, is the people, the percentage, the upper are attending events in Orem, what was their response to this allocation of money?
We can pull it out.
That
So I
kind
think
of
that's
show as more of an informed,
That would be really helpful. I would like that.
The one caution, I only bring this up just to consider. We're going to compare these all to the whole city. I wouldn't discount the whole city, though, because the whole city is paying.
We understand,
Yeah.
but it'd be nice to have the ones that are there on a regular basis.
And just for a little bit of context, so we did look at the grant criteria, for example, and how things were ranked among this interested group that's attending activities and events regularly. And the ranking falls out in the same order. So for like care tax priorities and funding allocation, I can look at how the different events and things that they would fund that $100, how they would spend it, how that looks different. But as far as rankings and ratings of grant criteria go, it was the same.
You know, it's interesting. The care tax is 1 cent out of every $10. To be honest with you, I think most people don't notice it. On the flip side, we receive a lot of income from those who come into our city to shop. If you remember, there was a survey done that we have a 25 to 50% bleed in on retail into our city. We receive tax money for the care tax from all those people as well. So I think it's an excellent program, and I think it's doing its job. Any other comments? All right, if no other comments, I'll take a motion to adjourn. From the city council, okay?
I will say there is a second agenda item, but or third, and that's just to talk about the recommendations, but it sounds like
We need more information.
So we'll
Yeah.
schedule another meeting. December 13th was the plan to present to the city council our recommendation. Not again what the policy will be, but the recommendation.
So I think we need more information, so.
So that's what I'm saying, I'll have to schedule another meeting between now and December
Yes.
13th.
Okay, is there a second on the motion to adjourn? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, Care Tax Commission. Thank you, Y2 Analytics, and thank you, council.
Steve, so we can run that stuff pretty quick around.
Okay.
And what we'll do, we'll go through and highlight stuff where, what happens when stuff.
Mayor, go to the kindness.
So we'll highlight stuff that's statistically different so folks can notice.
So that's start
it's-
having a senior. Steve, is there anything we need to do? Just there and say.
Yeah, will. Yeah, I'll send it with the, yeah, I will.
Is it a program that?
So it's a program under what happens each day.
Yeah, the question.
And then we have some people. Just for everybody on the council, just to remind you, we have Kindness Week kickoff at the Senior Citizen Center at 7. For all those who would like to attend.
Let me give you my card and then email me. I can
Kindness Week. So,
I've never been kind.
It's a stretch for you, Brent.
Janelle,
Don't change now.
anyway, so yeah, Lori's doing a great job.
did you have time?